Welcome to Who Cares, the podcast that embarks on a profound journey into the heart of empathy and indifference in our modern era. Each episode of Who Cares brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests from various industries and walks of life. But Who Cares goes beyond individual stories. We dive into the larger societal and psychological undercurrents that have led to a perceived decline in collective empathy. Who Cares isn't just a podcast. It's a powerful call to action for reigniting the spirit of empathy within each of us. Let's find the answer to who cares together. Welcome to Who Cares. Welcome to Who Cares, the podcast that digs deep into the disconnect between how connected we are and how much we actually care. I'm Dr. Wendy Solovich, and each week we talk with people who are actively pushing back against apathy and finding meaning through action. Today, I'm excited to be joined by someone who truly walks the walk, literally, Edgar McGregor. He's a hyperlocal meteorologist and environmentalist based in Pasadena, California. He's known for his detailed weather forecasts that help neighbors prepare for severe conditions, and he's conducted over 2,000 consecutive daily trash pickups in his local community. And during the 2025 Southern California firestorms, his forecasting gave thousands of people a head start that may have saved lives. Edgar's commitment to community, nature, and care is exactly what this podcast is all about. So we can just get right back into it if you want to. Mm-hmm. I think that's better. But maybe I usually start off with like a little bit of history. If you could tell us. I know Tyler mentioned that you started in high school even.
Yeah. Actually, before then, I've always been deeply interested in meteorology and the study of the atmosphere. Every single day, it's so different, even here in Southern California. And if you're not paying attention, you don't notice a lot of the beauty that's involved there. And I think a lot of people would enjoy it if they spent more time outside, more time in nature, and witnessing what the atmosphere has to offer.
And what kind of things are you witnessing? What are your favorite things?
Well, I know what my least favorite things are, but is growing up in the Altadena, Pasadena area, I go hiking at Eaton Canyon every single day. Or I should say, I did go hiking at Eaton Canyon every day. And I think my favorite thing was not just, rainstorms and lightning storms and things like that, but to see how meteorology impacts the local ecosystems, because every spring is different. For example, we've had a lot of rain in the last couple of years here in Southern California, and the canyon has been very lush. Has been like poison oak going up the trees and lots of broadleaf trees blooming. And other springs, it'll be very dry. It'll be very hot. And to see that change from season to season is really quite something. Now, the fire did burn through everything in the park. And so, I'm sure we'll touch more on that later. But that is another change. It's another change to experience. And the weather played everything in terms of its role there. So the more people enjoy nature, the more people take notice of nature, the more they can kind of step out of their bubbles a little bit that everybody lives in and kind of see the world from a more broad picture. And I think everyone would do well with that.
About living in the bubble and kind of stepping away from that.
Yeah, so here's a good example. And I might go on a bit of a tangent here, but over the last several decades, we've all noticed this. We are interacting with people less and less. More of our needs are met in our own bedrooms with our phones, with our computers, than ever before. Nowadays, people don't even have to go to the grocery store. They can order things from their bedroom and have it delivered straight to their door. And that's really had an impact on people's social or I guess, emotional intelligence when it comes to figuring out where their lives are and where they stand amongst people around them. But I want to go a little bit deeper into that and talk about how the meteorology side of that. If we go back several decades, how did we get our weather? The newspaper. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. In the 1940s, you got the weather from the newspaper, and you'd have to go out and purchase it. that weather forecast would be 24 hours overdue because it's got to be made, it's got to be printed, it's got to be distributed before the consumer reads it. And that limited meteorologists' ability to communicate severe weather. And then came the television. In about 1960s, 1970s, local news started having that weather segment on the channel, and people could tune in, and that was live information that was sent directly to the consumer. Come the 2000s and the 2010s, when people started having smartphones, now you get it right on your weather app. So now you don't need to turn on the TV and see other stories in your local area. You just have that weather app. And you get far less information from that weather app than you would otherwise. Because instead of having a meteorologist talk to you, now you have an automated service. Now you just get a little icon that says sunny or windy or rainy, and there's no additional detail there. And so where I'm going with this tangent is, even in the world of meteorology, as time goes on, we're less connected to those around us and those experts around us. And that's what I'm kind of working to change in my area, is that I'm a local meteorologist online. I'm not on the TV, but I'm on Facebook. I'm talking to people. I'm writing posts. I live in the community, so I understand, you know, this restaurant everybody likes, and that popular street that people like to drive down. And being local in that community, people appreciate that. And that's something that they're not used to.
Is that where the term hyperlocal comes from?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
So when we talk about local, it could mean the whole region. Orange County, Santa Barbara County, LA County, that's local. But hyperlocal is just the San Gabriel Valley, just those couple of communities along the foothills here who experience that unique microclimate that we have here.
Do you think meteorologists should only be speaking from those their own communities to really give you a good sense of what's happening there?
I think it works. Of course, we do need, you know, more national meteorologists, you know, on national news stations. But that is the future of meteorology. And to get back to kind of your previous question there, what I'm doing with my hyperlocal forecast is I'm creating that sense of community that a lot of people have lost. We have community centered around sports, kind of. But you know, that's just kind of a small segment of the population. Not everybody is going to go watch that UCLA versus USC football game. Everybody experiences the weather. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you live in this community, you're experiencing the weather.
That's true.
Even if you're inside. And that allows people to kind of step back and say, hey, it doesn't snow in Southern California. What does that mean about us? When I drive around and look, you know, I don't see the damage on the roads that you would see in Wisconsin from all the snow and ice there. And all those little details about what kind of plants do we have here impacted by the weather? What are our road conditions like impacted by the weather? What kind of vehicles do we have here impacted by the weather? How do you design your home and your landscaping impacted by the weather? And it is that it allows people to step back out of their bubbles, get a broader worldview. And that's important. And that's important because the more people are able to do that, the better decisions they're able to make in life. And the better the whole community will be.
More connected.
More connected.
So I've never seen people so connected through your Facebook page and other places that you've posted in social media. And it's such an interest all of a sudden. It seems to really pique their interest. And I think they do feel that sense of community through your social media postings. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think that's the best tool to reach people?
Well, I think the key behind that is when I write anything, my goal is not so much to inform, but also to get people to ask questions themselves. Why is it that when I drove from the grocery store back home, it stopped raining? And now it's sunny. Why is it that every time when I'm going to school in the morning, it's foggy by my house, but it's completely sunny at school? What's going on there? And usually people just kind of ignore that kind of stuff. And I pointed out to them and say, hey, you know, this neighborhood is particularly prone to this kind of weather event. But if you go to this next neighborhood over here, that is, the weather, the climate can change so radically. People who are going to pick where they're going to rebuild their home, if they can't build in their previous plot, I can tell them, hey, if you don't want your home to burn down, but you still want to be by the mountains, go to this neighborhood a mile and a half away. They are far less prone to those Santa Ana windstorms than your neighborhood beforehand.
Now, is that all based on history of weather in those areas, or how do you base that?
Topography.
It's totally topography.
It's totally about topography.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time studying Santa Ana windstorms. I hate to say it because it's kind of taboo, but Santa Ana windstorms, at least, were my favorite kind of weather event.
Yeah.
They made the mountains feel like they were coming alive.
Yeah.
And just to feel that fresh breeze with zero pollution coming off the wilderness, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Now that we've had probably one of the most expensive natural disasters in U.S. history caused by an extraordinarily powerful Santa Ana windstorm, I can't really say that as much.
Yeah.
But that is what I spend a lot of time forecasting. And I didn't quite, if you were to ask me what is the most dangerous natural disaster in our area, I probably would have said earthquakes.
Yeah.
I didn't think a fire could really do that in Altadena.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I spent all that time forecasting these Santa Anas, because now I had that information. I had all those little tidbits of knowledge and forecasting this event to prepare everybody.
Yeah.
And years ago, I had kind of divided up the community into these little sections that would experience their own type of Santa Ana wind climatology. This neighborhood is particularly prone during this type of Santa Ana, whereas that neighborhood is particularly prone during this other type of Santa Ana. And here's where the dividing line is. Well, as it turns out, if you were to overlay those sections that I drew in Altadena with where there were homes burned by the Eaton fire, they line up perfectly.
Oh, my goodness. So it is completely predictable.
It was completely predictable, which I think is good news.
Yeah,
because that means it's predictable in other communities.
Yeah,
if we can tell how the windstorm climatology is, not just in Southern California, but in the Colorado Front Range, in Northern California, and Hawaii, where these wind tunnels are,
it is fascinating.
If a fire breaks out, within minutes, an incident meteorologist can go online and call the fire department and say, you need to keep the fire away from that particular canyon, because that canyon, I know for a fact, experiences stronger winds. And if it gets into that canyon, it's going to run straight into the neighborhood.
Wow.
This information was not available to firefighters ever in any firestorm anywhere in the world, because we don't have that hyperlocal forecasting. And I didn't have a way to really tell the firefighters, nor did I really think that would be important until I saw it all line up.
Trace it.
Right. And so there's a reason why, although the fire started in Eaton Canyon, the neighborhoods below at Eaton Canyon actually did fairly well.
Yeah.
But once the fire spread to the west, into Altadena, into western Altadena, that's when it spread way into the city and it was unstoppable. There's a reason why behind that. It's not just random.
Yeah. So you've been talking about the fires that we just had. Can you bring us back to that moment when you felt that I got to say something? I got to put it out there?
Yeah. Well, it happened in multiple stages.
Okay.
The first stage was years in advance. One of the ways I protect my mental health is by going hiking every single day in the local canyons. And I clean up trash out there.
Yeah.
I bring a 5-gallon bucket with me, pickers, a pair of gloves, and I clean up trash. I don't worry about litter bugs. Just ignore them. Enjoy the natural space. Enjoy being able to be out in nature, even if it's not the most beautiful natural area ever. And I've done cleanups next to freeways, not on the side of the freeway, but near freeways.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about litter bugs and enjoy the natural space.
Yeah.
But during my hikes at Eaton Canyon, the more I hiked there, the more I learned about the local ecology. And eventually, come summertime, I start to look around and I notice things that look out of place.
Yeah.
Eaton Canyon is what we call a arroyo. It's a large wash. And so we don't have any of these in the central or eastern United States. They flood periodically, dramatically, and they're usually dry. So think about a 200-foot wide riverbed that has a small creek in the middle during 99% of the year, or no creek at all.
Yeah.
But there'll be an hour or two every couple of decades where the whole thing is under 10 feet of water that's moving 15 feet down the canyon and ripping out everything and completely changing up the creek.
Yeah.
So I noticed these giant logs sitting out in the desert.
Yeah.
Where do they come from?
Yeah.
There's no pine trees around here. There's no trees around here. I'm in the middle of this shrubland, and yet there's this huge 40-foot long tree that I can barely even wrap my hands half around it.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, these are large logs that came miles up the canyon during the major floods.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay, so that means we can get major floods in this canyon. So back in December 2021, we had a large flood, a large thunderstorm move over the canyon. It was pouring down rain all morning long.
Yeah.
The flood was mediocre.
Yeah.
The river swelled. It probably would have killed someone if they were in that river, but it wasn't bringing those giant logs down. And so I started to wonder, well, what are the requirements to get these logs here? And while walking around the canyon, you also notice these trees that are at the end of their life that fall over and are these giant piles of kindling wood. And so on my cleanups, when I show people online, I take a 2-minute video and I talk about my cleanup techniques.
Yeah.
I mentioned to people for years, hey, we're kind of ready for a wildfire out here. There's a lot of dry brush in the wilderness areas.
Yeah.
The wash hasn't seen a flood in many decades. It's full of fuel itself. There's all these logs that are sitting here that can only arrive here when floods happen immediately after wildfires.
Yeah.
And I knew we were ready. So I was warning people for years that this was coming. It was sooner rather than later. I had no idea when.
Wow.
It could be 10 years in advance. It could be next month.
Yeah.
But I was letting people know. And I'm getting back to your question originally. In May of 2024, we just came off 2 years or 18 months of the wettest 18-month period on record in Pasadena in 120 years of weather record keeping.
Really?
Now, rain is interesting in its relationship to wildfires.
Yeah.
A lot of people say wildfire or rainfall suppresses wildfire activity.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But only in the short term. In the long term, rainfall actually enhances wildfire activity because rainfall grows fuel, and if the rain ends, now you have a lot of fuel that is dry.
Yeah.
So we just, April 2024, we ended the wettest 18-month period in recorded history in Pasadena. 10 days later, we started the driest 9-month period in our history. Like from the wettest period ever to the driest period ever.
Even over the El Nino, I know we had a few years back.
Yes, the El Nino and La Nina have kind of a complicated relationship with California precipitation.
Yeah.
Usually El Nino means we get a lot of rainfall, and usually La Nina means we get less rainfall.
Yeah.
Generalization. There are plenty of exceptions to that. 2023 was a La Nina year. It was expected to be drier than average, and California got pummeled like crazy with a lot of winter storms. And so it's a generalization. But that's when we talk about El Nino and La Nina, we're trying to forecast into the future.
Yeah.
This was data that had already happened. This was the wettest 18 months ever, followed by the 9 driest months ever.
Yeah.
Those were conditions on the ground that we have data of that are current. And that impacts our ecosystems. All that fuel spent 18 months growing, all the poison oak was going up the trees, all the trees were full of moss and lush and everything was pretty. And I was taking pictures of it and going, yikes. And I wrote an article in May of 2024 and I said, this is beautiful, but if it dries out, it could mean catastrophe.
Yeah.
And I took pictures of the lush fuel literally a quarter mile away from where the Eaton fire started.
Wow.
Right at the bottom of the hill where those power lines were.
Yeah.
Those were the photos in that article there. So the whole summer went by in 2024, autumn went by in 2024. And once we got to the end of November and it hadn't rained yet, that's when I started to tell people, hey, this is not good. Like October and November, they should see some kind of rain. It should start to cool down.
Yeah.
We should see some precipitation. It's not like September is in Southern California where it's 110 degrees.
Yeah.
It should get a little bit cooler by that point. And by December, mid-December, when it hadn't rained yet, that's when I wrote a forecast to people saying, okay, look, this winter's not going the way we want. Next summer and autumn, 2025. So this is still in the future. Summer and autumn 2025 hasn't happened yet. That's when we can see really bad wildfires in California, because now we've just had all this rainfall, and now we've just had a dry summer, dry autumn, probably going to get a dry winter, and probably going to get a dry spring that we're currently in the middle of. And it hasn't really been. No. It's been a little dry, but we'll get to that later. Okay. And then, so on December 28th, I made a long-term forecast, and I said, folks, this is going to be a bad wildfire year next year. 2025 is going to be a bad fire year. I was not thinking January. I was thinking October, November. And about 24 hours later, that's when the windstorm started showing up on the forecast models. And that's when I began sounding the alarm. Okay, scratch the autumn 2025 thing. It could be in the next week. If we get a wildfire breaking out, we could see 1,000 homes destroyed. And
not 9,000.
People were responding to that like 1,000 homes. Come on, that's ridiculous. Like, I mean, wildfires are bad, but that's not realistic. And somebody even said to me that I was kind of harming my reputation by making that forecast so far in advance and saying that it could be that severe. And they have a point, right? There's a certain element that meteorologists have to consider when we write our forecasts. Because we're writing one forecast that thousands of people are going to receive, all of which are going to experience the storm in a different way. But, when the windstorm was approaching, especially the day before, I said to folks, get those pine needles out of your gutters and hope for the best. Because I don't know where a fire is going to break out. It could be Claremont. It could be La Crescenta. It could be Altadena. It could be Palisades. Who knows? But if one were to break out, it's going to be really bad. And Palisades preceded Eaton Canyon by about 12 hours. And we saw the situation there. We saw people running for their lives, having to abandon their vehicles. The dozers going through and pushing the vehicles aside on the boulevard just to get their equipment in. And it didn't even hit then. But the moment I got the text message on the Altadena Weather and Climate group chat on Facebook that there was a brush fire at Eaton Canyon,
you knew something.
I knew it was over. It was over.
And what happened to you at that point? What clicked in you?
Well, I live just below Eaton Canyon. So before I got that text message at 6:18 p.m., I went back and checked. The fire started at 6:16 p.m. So 120 seconds was the difference between when that fire started and when I got that message. I walked outside. It was already smoky. It was already smoking. There was already glow on the horizon. And I was like, we ran back inside and we emptied our house of everything we couldn't live without, including our cats, especially our cats. They went in the car first. And while we were evacuating, the fire was just like lava spewing down the mountains. And it was to our north at first, but it very quickly went to our east. And that's kind of a lateral jump along the mountains. The mountains are kind of east-west here in Southern California. And that means there were neighborhoods as far away from the mountains as my neighborhood that were on fire. Turns out the homes that were to my east that I could see the glow of were only 2 blocks away. I did not know they were 2 blocks away. I thought they were, maybe a mile away, but they were very close. And it never rained embers at my house, I don't think. That was kind of our sign. If it starts raining embers, we're evacuating. But we packed our cars to the brim of everything and hightailed it out of there. I had no idea until the next morning whether or not my home stood. It did, thankfully. But it was so rapid and traumatic and confusing, even for me, for someone who had already evacuated to get information.
Yeah.
So much so that I'm the meteorologist people turn to.
Yes.
And at 6 a.m. the next morning, I wrote a post saying, I think there were dozens of homes lost. I had no clue.
Yeah.
It was 6,000.
Yeah.
I had no clue the fire jumped
Was it
lake.
that many by that hour?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most homes were burned by 6 a.m., 7 a.m.
My
And
goodness.
I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm someone that a lot of people were turning to for information.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, should I have gone and driven around that night and just and watched everything? What should I have done? I don't know. I was getting all my stuff out of there.
Yeah.
And it's something that I knew would be a problem because, if a fire breaks out, do I prioritize my home or the community I serve?
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And so, it's, I don't dwell on it. I guess I haven't fully mentally processed it. Sometimes I think, God, the canyon's gone. But this is the worst natural disaster in California state history.
Yeah.
Number one.
I can tell that you feel a tremendous amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at the same time, like you said, to process your own feelings around, like, I'm in this canyon every day. I'm taking care of it every day. And here it is. It's burning down.
Yeah. Well, and see, here's the thing. I don't care that the canyon burned.
Okay.
At all.
Yeah. It takes care of itself.
It takes care of itself.
Yeah.
It's burned thousands and thousands of times over millions of years. There are
Yeah.
plant species in our canyon that are native to Eaton Canyon that cannot survive without fire.
Oh.
Cannot survive without fire.
Yeah.
And in addition to the fire, on February 13th, a little over a month after the firestorm, we had an intense thunderstorm roll through the canyon. We were standing well above the canyon rim, looking over the fence because the canyon's closed, into the wash below. And about 22 minutes after that thunderstorm came through, a 10-foot tall, 200-foot wide wall of water came thundering down the park.
Oh my goodness.
And guess what was inside that flood? All those pine tree logs. And I got to watch a whole bunch of them go down the canyon. I was like, yes, I got to experience that. There's the logs that I'm going to see for the next 20 years in the canyon that are coming into place. And I have it on video. And so
that's awesome.
The canyon, I don't care that it burned. We spent years cleaning up all the trash out of that canyon.
Yeah.
There's no plastic, toxic chemicals that permeated into the soils after that fire in the canyon.
Yeah.
I just wish it didn't burn during a darn windstorm.
Yeah.
Because so often when we get fires in California, they are in August and September, especially in the mountains. August and September, it's 110 degrees. There's a 30,000 foot tall I keep messing up that word. Pyrocumulonimbus thunderstorm towering over these fires as they burn into the mountains. That's what we typically expect in Andros National Forest fires. That was the Station Fire in 2009, Bobcat Fire in 2020, Bridge Fire in 2024. That's how a lot of the mountains burn, is in the summertime in these explosive fires. But when we get the autumn and wintertime fires, that's when they blow into the communities. And so I hate to say it, but I kind of wish someone would have flicked a cigarette into the park in September when it was hot. Yeah. Because the canyon would have burned and we could have lost homes. Yeah. But it would not have burned 6,000 homes and killed 17 people. And so it's like, gosh, there's so much. There's so much to consider. There's so much what ifs and all that extra stuff. We can't dwell on the past.
Yeah.
And
you feel haunted by that a little bit?
No.
Okay.
No.
Good for you. Yeah.
Because I know that the type of windstorm that happened in Altadena could very easily happen, I should say the type of firestorm that happened in Altadena could very easily happen in 15 other communities in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
La Cañada, La Crescenta, Silmar, Claremont, Glendora, Azusa, Monrovia, Arcadia, where we're sitting. Yeah. It can happen here. Yeah. You guys just need enough fuel in the mountains. Yeah. And Altadena hadn't burned in 30 years. It was the oldest burn scar in the San Gabriel Mountains, and that's part of why the fire was so bad. Yeah. But as climate change continues, this could happen again. And we got to prevent that.
Can you tell me more about the climate change and how you see that?
Yes. So something that, and I've already touched on it, of course, that climatologists have noticed about California is that our precipitation is not decreasing. It's actually getting more variable. We're seeing wetter, wet years and drier, dry years. And there's fewer years that are near average. Now, California's always kind of been like that. You go to New York City and you look at the rainfall records, each year is relatively similar to one another.
Yeah.
But here in California, it's a little bit variable. But with climate change, it's even more variable. Lo and behold, we get the wettest 18-month period on record, followed by the driest 9-month period on record, separated by just 10 days.
Yeah.
That's just, climate change right then and there.
Yeah.
But something that's also happening is that climate change is noticeably delaying the rainy season by as much as 2 weeks on average compared to the early 20th century here in Southern California.
Yeah.
And we measure that by saying, when do you get the first quarter inch of rainfall? The first rainfall that is not going to end fire season, but it's probably going to limit how extreme and how hot that fire can be.
Yeah.
That's moved backwards from about October 16th to October 30th, 2 weeks. But it's a generalization, right?
Yeah.
Of the 5 latest starts to the rainy season in Southern California, 3 of them in the last 120 years have happened in the last 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's they're kind of collecting all in the recent term.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is you have the dry season from May to October, typically in California, and the windy season from October through about April or so. Well, October is where they meet. That's typically when we get our urban wildfires. Think like the 1991 Oakland Hills fire or the 2003 Cedar Fire in San Diego. Those were both in October. They burned through the neighborhoods and caused a lot of devastation. Well, this fire was in January.
Yeah.
And it happened twice in Palisades and Altadena.
Yeah.
And climate change is causing those 2 seasons, the dry season and the windy season, to interact more often. Now, the powerful Santa Ana windstorms typically wait until December, January, and February. So if you get a particular year where it's very dry up until that point, and then you get a strong windstorm before that first rainfall, that's when you get the major wildfires.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what transpired this time around.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you want people to know about that mostly? I mean, in terms of what we can do at this point.
So wildfires are a unique natural disaster among all kind of weather events in that there's a difference between wildfire weather and scenarios where wildfires actually start. For example, if you have conditions that are conducive for a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to get a hurricane.
Yeah.
Right? Hurricanes spawn on their own. But you can have perfect conditions for a wildfire and not see anything because nobody flicked a cigarette.
Right.
Nobody had a chain dragging along, behind their truck while they were driving down the road. Nobody's power lines failed and blew down during the windstorm. And that means that when us meteorologists create forecasts and say, hey, there's a very high fire danger and nothing happens, people tend to not trust our forecasts.
Right.
I can make a forecast and say a windstorm is coming, and the windstorm's coming.
Right.
It may be stronger or weaker than my forecast, but it's coming.
Right.
Fires, they're so difficult because 95% of them are started by humans.
Yeah.
And it's very rare for us to say there's going to be fires started by nature, mostly, of course, lightning strikes.
Right.
And that kind of tarnishes meteorologists' reputation in that forecasting realm. So, it's... Where am I going at this point? What was your question again?
Just if what we can do to kind of look at these things.
Okay, first of all, we need a windstorm scale. We have have the Saffir-Simpson scale for hurricanes, and everybody knows it, even if they don't know it by name. That's what a tropical storm, Category 2, Category 5 hurricane is.
Yeah.
That's the Saffir-Simpson scale. We have the scale for earthquakes, like a magnitude 7.5. We have a scale for tornadoes.
Yeah.
We have a scale for solar storms. We have all these kinds of scales to communicate to the general public how strong this event is going to be.
Yeah.
We don't have one for Santa Ana windstorms.
Yeah.
No data keeping whatsoever.
No. Nobody data keeps on the Santa Anas?
Nope. Nothing.
Interesting.
Nothing. You can't go back and get a seasonal analysis. No government institution creates seasonal forecasts for Santa Ana winds. Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
It's not novel to create one. We have one for all other types of weather events.
Yeah.
We need one for Santa Ana windstorms. It's just difficult because they're so local. And strong winds happen all the time up on remote mountain ridge lines. And do you call that a Santa Ana windstorm? I mean, you have to weigh
qualifies,
that.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is a problem.
Yeah.
Right. We have Category 5 hurricane equivalent devastation in the community right over there.
Yeah.
And you look out these windows, it looks completely fine here.
Yeah.
But same in my neighborhood, but the next block over, everything is annihilated.
Yeah.
And so we need a scale to be able to communicate to these folks. So you asked about preparedness. A lot of people don't quite realize this because it happened on the day of the election, but we had a major fire in Camarillo, California that ran into a neighborhood and burned down 180 homes. Ooh. In Ventura County.
Yeah. Wow.
People don't know it because there was an election on the same, it was on November 6th. And that was a horrible disaster. Multiple times this past autumn, we had been issuing red flag warnings about the high fire danger. Well, if you issue so many red flag warnings, how do you tell the mediocre red flag warnings versus the once in a century red flag warnings? You can't, because we don't have a scale, and we can't tell the firefighters and the people who make decisions how strong this windstorm is. And I knew this was about a once in a 12-year, once in 15-year windstorm, combining with a driest period ever recorded in our area. I knew how bad those conditions were, but I'm just a private meteorologist. I can't, our official firefighting resources listen to me, probably not. So what I've done over recent years is I've created our own windstorm scale. And basically, to qualify as a windstorm, what you need is widespread 25-mile-an-hour wind gusts in suburban areas.
Okay.
Or widespread 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts in mountain areas where you have ridge lines that tend to focus some of that energy and cause winds to be a little bit stronger. And I've separated all these different scales, and I can probably share a graphic with you guys later so you can see what it looks like. But I introduced it to my local community years ago.
Yeah.
And they know kind of in general what types of windstorms is in the forecast based on the number I give it. Class 1, Class 2, Class 4, Class 3, Class 4, Class 5. And we've had strong windstorms in the last couple of years. In Altadena, we had 60-mile-an-hour winds, sent trees through people's living rooms and destroyed their cars. But I labeled those as a Class 3 windstorm because I knew that there's a possibility that we can see a Class 4 and a Class 5, and those windstorms just weren't quite strong enough.
Yeah.
Well, for this windstorm, on my forecast, I was telling people it's a Class 4. And people look at that and go, oh, well, Class 4.
Yeah.
Well, last time it was a Class 3.
Yeah.
This one's a 4.
Yeah.
So that one should be stronger.
Yeah.
Easy to understand.
Yeah.
Doesn't need any previous scientific knowledge about anything related to winds to know the windstorms that we saw in 2020, 2022, and 2024 are just a little bit weaker than the one we're expecting this week in January 2025. And so that's one way. That's the easiest thing to do. That's the lowest fruit on the tree to prepare. We need a nationwide windstorm scale because the mountain wave windstorms that destroyed Altadena and Palisades are the exact same phenomena that destroyed Paradise, California, and their wildfire that killed 85 people, Lahaina, Hawaii, and their fire that killed 102, and in the Marshall fire in Boulder, Colorado. I think it was Boulder, on the Front Range there. That I don't know the death toll there, but these mountain waves need a weather scale. And that's an easy fruit to pick that we can deploy on a national scale. As for personal preparedness, simple things like removing pine needles from your gutter can save your house. Someone should do this study, actually. They should drive around Altadena and Palisades and look for homes that don't have gutters versus homes that do. And I wonder if they're going to find a correlation between those homes that have gutters on them that burned versus homes that didn't,
Yeah.
because those leaves will collect in the gutter, starts raining embers,
Yeah.
and those leaves catch fire.
And
Now
it's
they're
up
on the
under
little eave below the
under
roof.
yeah.
That's it.
So even that more so than the roof
Yeah.
being the issue.
Yeah. It's just one ember that catches people's homes on fire.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like their whole tree was engulfed and
Right.
that being next to the tree made their homes burn down, in most cases at least.
Yeah.
It was just the little things. Just the ember went inside their vent and landed in the insulation in their attic. The ember went into the pine needles in their gutter, and they lost everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cleaning out your gutter, especially if you live in wilderness areas, having a clearance around your home
Yeah.
of brush, especially dry brush.
Yeah.
If you have a dead tree, take that out right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Don't let it sit there
Yeah.
and hope that it survives. Just
Yeah.
plant a new one, because
Yeah.
if a firestorm comes, that's going to be what sets it off. And so, clearing brush away, building homes that are fire resistant, especially if you live next to wilderness areas,
Yeah.
and having a windstorm scale. Those are 3 fairly easy things we can do to dramatically reduce people's risk.
You think that would have dramatically reduced what we saw in Altadena?
If we had a windstorm scale, I think Southern California Edison would have shut off the power.
And you think that's what did it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw the fire engines coming down from Oregon on
Yeah.
January 9th,
Mm.
too little, too late. Should have been here 3 days ago.
Yeah.
The fire crews, bless their hearts, knew the windstorm was coming. It wasn't made clear to them that this was a once-in-a-century firestorm potential.
Yeah.
Wasn't, look me in the eye. This is once-in-a-century firestorm potential. It just wasn't made clear to them. And because they get hit with so many red flag warnings
Yes.
all autumn long, this is just another one. And can you really blame them? Can you really blame anyone? People are just going to jump to that. They're going to jump to that blame. They want to accuse someone or something of the fire.
Yeah.
And I recommend against it, because it doesn't bring back the homes.
Doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't bring back the lost lives.
No.
It doesn't protect people in the future from a firestorm that could happen in 2033
Yeah.
or 2028 or 2046, because they're going to happen again in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in the helpers, not the complainers.
Well, that's what's important, and that's why I'm so glad to talk to you today and see what you're doing, because I think you're taking from what happened, the tragedy that we have, and trying to pull from it and learn from it and apply it to future situations, which I think is so important, instead of shutting down.
Right.
And I think a lot of people want to shut down because it's so overwhelming. It's so hard to believe. This, I mean, you listen to people talk about it on the news, or, I've had 6 friends who lost their homes, and, they're just in a daze. They're just, understandably, because, your whole life, you feel like your whole life is gone in a second, and there was nothing you could do about it, really. I mean, it happens. So, I think we need that voice to come out and say, okay, this happened, and we got to get help for it, and we've got to get ourselves together, and we have to learn from it, and what can we do now? Where do we go with this now, and how do we take care of ourselves in this now? And each other, and maybe it is a realization on some sort of how important our communities are, because that's the most amazing thing that I've been seeing coming out of this, is the communities coming together. How can we help? What can we do? What do you need? And it's sad that it takes a fire to do that, but maybe this is what's happening, and what you're saying too is hopefully maybe people are going to listen to you a little bit better and realize how important these things are at this point.
Yeah, we need community leaders.
Yes.
And so, we have another Facebook group for our local canyon, and everyone's really sad that it was burned out and destroyed. And for example, one of the things I did was I told people, hey, if you've cleaned up trash in the last couple of years, it's not just like preventing that plastic from being ingested by animals, or the glass, being in the park and anything stepping on the glass. Because you cleaned up that trash, that plastic, that styrofoam wasn't present to be burned in a wildfire. burned plastic and burned styrofoam is horrible for the environment.
Yeah.
Releases all kinds of toxic chemicals
Wow.
into the soils that it can just create dead zones, honestly.
Yeah.
And if you help clean up trash, it's not there.
Yeah.
It wasn't present. It's over in the landfill
Yeah.
tens of miles away.
Yeah.
And people reacted pretty well to that. They were like, yeah, you're right. That
That's
because of that,
awesome.
because they
I
cleaned
never
that up.
thought
That it
about it
wasn't there
that
for the
way.
fire.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think it's important for people, especially in areas that haven't been impacted yet by these kinds of things, to learn about it. Because knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
The more you learn about these local areas,
Yeah.
the more you can mentally process it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not at all sad about Eaton Canyon.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I've been telling people for years the park will get destroyed. I bought a new phone
Yeah.
with a good camera
Yeah.
because I wanted to take great pictures of the canyon because I know for a fact
Yeah.
I could not bring my grandchildren there one day in 60 years because it would not be the same park.
Yeah.
It'd be a completely different place.
Yeah.
I go back and I look at satellite imagery. I go back and look at old pictures of the park and I go, well, the mountains look the same, but that huge boulder, it's not there anymore.
Oh, wow.
And where's that giant boulder that is there now?
Yeah.
And this area used to be forest and now it's desert. And that area used to be a desert and now it's forest.
Wow.
It's like, and everything just changes around. And the trail used to be over there and now it's up here. It's like everything is all different. And you can kind of get excited about that to enjoy experiencing that change. But of course, it's different for your home.
Yeah.
And your belongings and your rock and your stabilizers and your routines.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of people, especially outside the Eaton fire, don't realize. And a lot of people who were impacted by the Eaton fire can't quite put into words is that they lost their routines. Because that's the worst possible thing to lose.
Yeah.
Is routines.
Yep.
And, any college kid freshman year, when they go off, they lose their routines. They lost their friends or their favorite burrito place they like to go to. And now they got to build all new routines. And that's can be difficult for kids. And that's why some kids, can't make it through that first semester. It's just because they lose that routine. And that's what a lot of people in Altadena and Palisades are experiencing is they've lost that routine.
For the second time in a few years, because first the pandemic, right?
Yeah. And so I think I don't know what to say. And that's an important part about it is that I'm not a mental health professional.
Yeah.
I just communicate the weather.
Yeah.
And knowing my limits as a scientist is important because when people ask me questions in fields that I may not fully recognize, like air quality, I say to them, I don't know. And I would like to know. And I hope you provide me with some information if you find out. But I'm not going to give you an answer that could be wrong, that could endanger you.
Yeah.
People ask me, is it safe for my kids to go back to school in Pasadena? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not my field.
Yeah.
And so often people will attempt to answer those questions because they want to provide that service and they will unknowingly compromise, other people and give them bad information. And that's another problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. You talk about, what is the line? Disrespect.
Disrespect.
Don't disrespect daily walks in nature.
Yes. Yes.
Can you say more about that? I found that very interesting.
Well, that's one of the routines I lost. And so even though my home survived, I can't go walk at Eaton Canyon every day. It's closed. And I love that park. It's a bike ride away. And it's got forests and mountains and shrublands and, giant ravines and all sorts of any kind of biome that you want in the park. And to be away from it for so long is going to be tough. I think when you miss a daily trash pickup, when I miss a daily trash pickup, the first time it doesn't really impact you all that much, especially if you've been missing some recently. But as time goes on, it's a staple, especially during the COVID pandemic. That was important. It was someplace to go every single day.
Yeah.
Put on your clothes, brush your teeth, make your hair look
Absolutely.
nice,
Yeah.
go for a walk, complete a task, help the environment, breathe some fresh air. All these different needs that a walk in the park helps. That a lot of people just kind of go, "Ugh, I don't need to walk in the park. That's for I don't need to do that. I'm stronger than that. I don't know what you're talking about, because the strongest people I know go for walks every single day in the local park. Go for a stroll. Go for a bike ride if they're physically able to. And I think more people need to do it.
Yeah.
And if you want to clean up trash along the way,
Yeah.
don't worry about
More
litter
power
bugs.
to
Just
you.
ignore
Yeah.
them. Put them out of your mind. Enjoy the natural world.
Yeah.
If you spend too much time getting angry at litter bugs, you're gonna hate those cleanups.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna go on
No.
another one.
No.
Whenever I have people join me on my hike, I pull them aside. I say, one rule: do not complain to litter bugs to me, because you're A, preaching to the choir,
Yeah.
and B,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
They
This is
are.
not the vibe right now.
It's so interesting because in my mind, I'm thinking people who go on nature hikes and spend a lot of time in nature are not typically a litter bug type. So when I saw you in the videos picking up that amount of trash, it was just mind blowing to think that there's that much there to
and
do.
if you said that on a hike, I would go,
Really?
stop. Don't
Really?
even talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I'm on day 2068 or something like that right now. The fire happened on day 1992. I still don't understand why people litter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still don't understand why people litter the things that they litter in the park.
Yeah.
Who brings a floating chlorine dispenser that belongs in backyard pools on a hike and litters it a mile into the park?
Oh my goodness.
Who does that? Who people will leave cash. They'll lose their passports. I find debit cards. I find wallets. I find phones. I find watches. I find all sorts of stuff. I find like giant bags of concrete powder.
Wow.
What's that doing out here? Who brings that on a hike?
Yeah.
Who does that? And so this is why I just say, just don't even think about these kinds of things.
You just pick
go
it
on your
up.
hike and enjoy the
Pick
wilderness
it up.
areas, because people will just litter the darndest things.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer for half
You could
of it.
write a book about that.
I could,
probably.
yeah. I mean, water bottles and granola bar wrappers, that makes sense. But it's so strange. And especially in waterways, there's trash everywhere.
And that's not from the water carrying it from other places.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I spent a month this past October living in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Oh.
And I had difficulty getting down to the Ohio River, which is separating West Virginia and Ohio along the town there in the area, because a lot of areas are privately developed. It's not like the river is publicly accessible right along the banks there. And so I'd go down to this town called McMecken, West Virginia, because they have a little river park alongside there. Well, as it turns out, the way the prevailing winds in the Ohio River Valley are in that general area along this beach during multiple types of weather patterns, whether it's a warm sunny day or a cold winter day, the wind is always blowing onshore in this river on this beach. And just the shape of the river nearby and the way the winds blow. So a lot of trash will pile up on this beach. And I'd have days where I just am collecting blocks and blocks of styrofoam.
Wow.
Because that's the worst thing that's out there. And, people say, oh, that's West Virginia for you. There's a lot of trash. All 160 parks that I've cleaned up trash in 9 different U.S. states have all had trash.
Really?
Hawaii, Puerto Rico, California, Arizona,
Doesn't matter.
Texas, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Nevada. There's trash everywhere in our wilderness areas, especially in waterways.
Yeah.
And, places like Eaton Canyon that are these super popular hiking trails and designated natural areas get a lot of attention from the cleanup crews and the Earth Day crews. But little kind of, I call them, what's the word I use? Negative spaces. Negative spaces where no one, even if you live next to it, you just don't quite realize it exists.
Yeah.
Because you don't really when you pass by on the road, you don't really look back inside those trees.
Yeah.
Just little negative spaces. There's thousands of them throughout your community where there's wilderness and they're all full of trash.
Yeah.
Every last one. And it's, the worst places I've ever seen was Highway 133 east of San Jose in Northern California. Diablo Range, beautiful rolling golden California hills. And you look down and there's a 4-foot layer thick of garbage along the highway in the wilderness going 200 feet down the hill. Refrigerators, mattresses,
Just
roofing
dropping
material, bags of trash, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
It's everywhere. And a lot of attention is being given to these designated natural areas, these beaches, these Earth Day group cleanups, and it's not cutting it.
Yeah.
There's more trash in the world every single day than there was the day before it in all of human history. And it's bad.
Do you think this is a reason why people shut down and don't feel and pretend and just keep going? And
Well, yes, all of it is so much. And what I say to people is you've got to turn off the international and national news. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But on a local level, there's so much people can do.
How much research is being done for hyperlocal forecasting and such? I mean, is that a big deal? Is that
Nope.
that something in just you've kind of in your realm that you've
I don't know of anyone else in the U.S. that does truly hyperlocal forecasting the way that I do. People do regional forecasting, like Southern California or Southeast Missouri or whatever. But for just specific communities at the scale, I don't know anyone else. I'm sure there could be, but it is definitely a new thing, and it's critical, especially here in Southern California, where we have all these different kinds of microclimates. Right. Today, the high temperature is 90 here. Well, you go to Santa Monica, 15 miles away, the high is what, 68?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You go up to the mountains, there's still snow on the ground.
Yeah.
We know it doesn't snow here,
Yeah.
but there's so many microclimates so very close to one another that a forecast for someone in this neighborhood is not going to be valid for the neighborhood next door.
Right.
I just in our park, we've had 2 weather stations that are under a mile away from each other record overnight low temperatures 30 degrees apart from each other.
Wow.
One weather station stays in the 90s overnight. The one 3/4 of a mile away gets down into the 60s or even 50s.
And do you attribute that to climate change?
No, that's just topography. That's just topography. Cold air sinks at night and it pools in the local canyons. And so if you start your hike at the bottom of the canyon and say, well, it's 6 a.m. It's going to be hot today, so I'm going to get my hike in early. It's 60 degrees. Should be nice. You go up the mountain. Suddenly you find 15 minutes into your hike, it's 90 degrees. And you didn't bring enough water.
Isn't that
just because
crazy?
the hot air rises and the cool air pools in the valleys. And so, the greatest difference I've seen was 2 weather stations that were they were maybe 100 feet apart, but they were also about 100 feet in elevation difference. One dropped into the 30s for an overnight low. The other one had a low of about 60. So you walk down that hill over there, it's going to drop 25 degrees.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so people type on my forecast and say, you were wrong last night. It was a lot colder than you said it would be. I'm running a forecast for all these different neighborhoods. I can't locate for your one house. It's like, I don't know what to do. But yeah, I love meteorology and learning all these different tidbits and information, and I love being involved locally.
Yeah.
And that is what I think everyone needs to start doing.
Yeah.
Because when you're 3,000 miles away from somebody, it's very easy to get hateful messages.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody in your community, I've had people who I know I don't agree with them on their politics, but they still invite me to do a speech about Santa Ana winds at their club or something.
Terrific.
And that's not something you get on a national scale, especially not international scale. And so more people need to get involved locally, whether that's volunteering at your local rec center, going on a cleanup every day at your local hiking trail, getting involved in local online groups and whatever thing you might be interested in, sports, knitting, TV shows, whatever. Just do it locally.
Yeah.
And be there in person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. That's great advice, I think. Great advice. So you know, to change the subject a little bit, you had talked about mental health in all of this, and you've seen the effects of how this is affecting people and yourself.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
It's great that you asked that question because I was just thinking about having to make that point and how I haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah.
So good timing, right? So yeah, in my time hiking in Eaton Canyon, I'd have a lot of conversations with people. I like to say, and as a slight sidebar, people didn't have conversations with me as much on the hiking trails in the Bay Area as they do in Southern California.
Really?
Not sure why. It might be a little bit of Southern hospitality that we associate with the Southeast United States that's expanding over here. But I don't know. I just didn't have nearly as many conversations in the Bay Area. But sometimes I would have 7-8 conversations with people on the hiking trail.
Wow.
Just standing there for 5 minutes per hike.
Yeah.
Per hike. And or like someone getting out of the car at the same time we'd walk down the trail together having a conversation. I have no idea who this person is, but we're chatting about things. And in that time, I'd run into people who were present during the 1993 Kinaloa fire that burned through parts of Altadena. Again, we lost about 120 homes that time. Also happened at night during a Santa Ana windstorm. It wasn't as strong though. And people still have trauma from that 31 years later. And they say, you know, anytime the Santa Ana winds blow, I get really nervous that there's going to be a fire. And I wouldn't say I kind of brushed that off, but it didn't sink in for me what that meant when people said that. It didn't sink in for me.
Yeah.
And now, oh my God, this fire destroyed, 50 times as many homes as the 1993 fire. 50 times. It took, I guess 6 times as many lives. This is way worse.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna have trauma from the first Santa Ana windstorms, and we weren't the only community that was completely leveled that night in a major wildfire. It also happened 30 miles away.
Yeah.
And anytime I make a forecast about Santa Ana winds from here on out, I just know that people are gonna look at that and think, "Oh my God, I'm about to lose everything I love again."
Yeah.
And I'm specifically preparing the next time there's a wildfire anywhere in the mountains to make a video and to tell people very calmly, your home's not going to burn down. This is not January 7th.
Yeah.
There's not going to be winds. Remember that night? And I told you, get out. Everyone get out now. Run. This is a massive fire. I'm not doing that this time. You're good.
Yeah.
You're good. Yeah. And I'm preparing for that because there's going to be more windstorms and people are going to be traumatized by that.
Yeah.
And some people just have straight up left Southern California.
Yeah.
I've had people. One family I forecast for, they moved to Colorado.
Wow.
And if you want to avoid wildfires, Colorado might not be.
That's
not the place. Yeah, but they left and they said they're probably not going to come back to Southern California, and so might be more to affordability is probably another big factor there. But everyone who remains, even if they don't return to Altadena or Palisades specifically, they're gonna always fear that devil wind coming from the mountains in autumn that can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And something that I think people who haven't experienced Santa Ana windstorms don't quite realize is that these things are equivalent to hurricanes.
Yeah.
Category 3 Hurricane Milton made landfall in Tampa Bay last October 2024. And you can go online and you can look at the maximum wind speeds from this Category 3 major hurricane in Florida by landfall. And you go over to California and you look at the maximum wind speeds on January 7th, and they're the same. So this isn't the equivalent of a Category 1 hurricane. This is like the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane that blasted through the area.
Just minus the moisture.
Just minus all the rain and the storm surge. And so, the core of a hurricane where you see like sustained 110 mile an hour winds, it's a very small area. And within half a mile of interacting with any land, that's already facing a lot of friction and is decaying away.
Yeah.
110 mile an hour hurricane makes landfall. You're probably not going to see wind stronger than even 80 miles an hour, surprisingly. But that's a topic for another discussion.
Okay.
These are powerful Santa Ana windstorms. They are mean things,
Yeah.
and people are going to be frightened of them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And so how do I, as a meteorologist, ensure when I make a forecast that I'm informing people in the best possible way, that I don't get them to be, I don't make them anxious, but I also make them prepared.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Yeah.
That wasn't in the original job description, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though? As you say that, I think about the beauty of this is you lived it.
Mm-hmm.
You're
right.
in the same community. And
Right.
so I think by sharing your experience and even prefacing by saying, look, I was here when this happened.
Yeah. This is not the same scenario.
It's
right.
not the same thing.
Yeah.
And I would know because I lived it.
Mhm.
I was there with you. And the sense that you're creating community in that
Mhm.
moment for them, I think that says it all.
Right.
There's a calming effect right there. It's like, okay, this guy knows what it feels like to be in this.
Yeah.
He can be right on the level with me. And we know going into this, I can trust what he's saying because he knows what that was like and he
Mhm.
knows what it's like now.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And think about this. What if the fire hadn't broken out in Altadena, where 80% of my follower base is located?
Right.
What if it broke out 2 towns away in La Crescenta?
Right.
I
Right.
don't have nearly
Right.
as much pull in the community as I do there.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of frightens me because there
Yeah.
won't be another fire in
Yeah.
these communities. And so
Yes.
I'm trying to expand my forecasting to other foothill communities here so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people can be informed.
Yeah.
And during the bridge fire in September that was burning in the Anderson National Forest, I went on to all the little Facebook groups in the eastern San Gabriel Valley, in like Laverne, Claremont, San Dimas and whatnot. And I multiple times told people the south flank of this fire is calm. It's not coming towards you.
Yeah.
And the local news on the stations in downtown LA were like, breaking news, massive fire in the Anderson National Forest.
Oh, yeah.
Look at this giant plume of smoke.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, oh my God, is
Yeah.
that going to come burn down my house?
Yeah.
And I'm in their Facebook groups. I'm saying, nope, you're
No.
good. It's burning the other direction.
Yeah.
The only way for your neighborhood in this neighborhood, in that neighborhood, in that neighborhood to burn down is if the southern flank picks up.
Yeah.
And the southern flank is not picking up.
Yeah.
And so to be a community scientist,
Yes.
not just a scientist in general,
Yes.
is so important for these people.
Yes.
And it allows you to make better forecasts.
Yeah.
People who meteorologists who move from other stations in the country and get transported to the LA local news stations, they don't know our local climatology. It takes a long time to kind of figure out all those different little niches and for each scenario to repeat itself a second time. And that makes them instantly an amateur.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have a PhD, you're an amateur at meteorology in this little area because you don't know all the little quirks and all the little niches and all the little tidbits that go into this kind of thing. And so, we need more community scientists. We need more people getting involved. I did my best to get air quality experts to communicate things better.
Wonderful.
And I kind of failed at that because, there's a lot of questions in regards to air quality in Altadena that people never had answered. And I still don't have the answers.
Really?
Yeah.
It's hard to find people to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, my question was, how bad is it to be there during the fire versus being there 24 hours after the fire?
Yeah.
What's that difference?
Yeah.
And people say, oh, it's horrible. Okay, but for who?
Yeah.
Because it's very different in Monrovia
For who, for
versus
where.
Pasadena
Right.
versus Altadena itself. And so it's like, it was very difficult for me to get air quality experts to be community scientists.
Yeah.
And I still haven't had any success. And so I want all kinds of scientists, seismologists, biologists, chemists, everyone to get more involved in their local community because they can offer a lot of information and take themselves off the national stage. It's too crazy over there.
Yeah. Well, I see you got some ideas brewing.
Yeah.
I can see why you said, I love that you said, the crushing knowledge I have 90 years in the universe to make as big and a positive impact as possible.
Yeah.
I feel it. I feel
Yes.
the
Yes.
the pressure.
Well, what else are you gonna do,
That's
right?
right.
And
That's
so
right.
this is your chance and
Yeah.
to make an impact. And
Yeah.
we have the responsibility to make as positive of an impact as possible.
Yeah.
It's and this is getting a little bit too deep, but as Tyler knows, we've already lost a few members of our class in high school.
Mm.
One of which to a car crash.
Mm.
And at this age, you just don't think it could be
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
And it's I think about them quite a
Mm.
bit actually,
Mm.
and I want to make sure that I serve people as best I can,
Mm.
because it'll happen to all of us eventually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that you are so connected and
Hmm.
so caring about that in the way that you are. It's amazing and
Yeah.
doing great work. It's
Thank you.
really, I know that I can see it when I see all the people posting how appreciative they are of what you do, and it means a lot to people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something to be said for that, right?
Yeah, and they mean a lot to me as well. And
Yeah.
I encourage them to go for walks every day in the local parks,
Yeah.
not the ones that are closed.
Yes.
But um, I encourage more community scientists more scientists to become community scientists and get
Mhm.
involved and share their expertise and how it relates to their neighbors. I encourage people to get involved locally as much as possible.
Yeah.
And if you just got to put aside that national news, not international news.
Yeah.
It's like that's
Yeah.
really there's 8 billion people in the world,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like if you want to make your world 40,000 people, you can,
Yeah.
especially here in the U.S. And
Yeah.
so that's what I offer. That's what I
Yeah.
recommend to people.
So one of the ways you told me that we can do that in our communities is to look up your page. You have a page on
Yes.
Patreon?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I offer. So I have the Altadena Weather and Climate Facebook group, and that's where I kind of talk about weather a little bit, and it's like a weather fan page. But I also post life-saving information. If there's truly extreme weather that people need to know to keep their lives and their property safe, it goes on there. But I also have a Patreon where I write hyperlocal forecasts every 48 hours that get sent straight to people's emails. So if they sign up,
Wow.
they get that email every other day containing the forecast. I have little graphics, temperature bar charts, additional comments about what's going on, an executive summary just to get those points out right away.
Yeah.
And that's more made for businesses and professionals and people who need regular forecast updates.
Okay.
No matter what kind of weather there is, even if it's sunny and calm every single day for the next 10 days, still to have that information, people can sign up there.
Okay.
And it's only 25 cents per forecast or $4 a month. And
well,
I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you want to tell them how they can get that information? And
yes. So if you go on to Patreon and you search up Edgar McGregor, you can sign up for $4 a month or 25 cents per forecast and get a hyperlocal weather forecast sent straight to your email inbox every 48 hours. And it'll contain things like a graphical summary of the temperature and what kind of weather you can experience each day. It's valid for the San Gabriel Valley foothill communities. So if you're like in Orange County or Ventura County, it may not relate as much. Most things will still be valid, but if you live in the San Gabriel Valley especially, this is for you guys. And I definitely recommend it. And
Great.
It helps support the work that I do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're
We
welcome.
really appreciate you being here, and I've learned a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. If you've been moved by Edgar's story today, maybe this is your invitation, not to save the world in a day, but to start with a walk, to look around, to notice what's worth protecting. Maybe it's hiking a trail, a neighbor, a patch of sky, and maybe, like Edgar, you decide not to disrespect it. Support Edgar's work on Patreon and follow Altadena Weather and Climate for hyperlocal weather updates and climate insight. Subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode, and come back next time as we continue asking the question, who cares?